I'm Jean Nolte, editor at Fons & Porter.
And I'm Colleen Tauke. I'm the sewing specialist at Fons & Porter. In this tutorial, we will show you how to assemble the quilt called Woven Scrappy Strips.
For the pattern for this quilt, go to fonsandporter.com/quiltingquickly. Well, this is an interesting quilt made all of solids.
Yes.
So we're starting with 2.5-inch strips of solid fabrics, and then a white background solid, and then later we'll use 2 colors of beige solid.
Exactly.
So the first thing we're going to do is make these 2 patches, and you have a quick way to make a lot of them in a short time.
The drawing, drawing for the directions for this quilt, it talks about using a solid strip white, and then we're going to add squares that you cut from each of the colors, 2.5-inch squares, just to chain them quickly, one after the other, side by side like this. It's a little different piecing than we're used to, but since we have to create a lot of these 2 patches really quickly, this is a great way to do it.
So you'd fill your whole strip
all the way down, so that
with one right after the other.
You could have a stack of the little squares sitting beside you and just keep adding them as you put them under the machine. So this is what it's going to look like. Just chain them, and of course I'm using dark colored thread here, so you would normally use a white or a light tan, beige colored probably thread when you're piecing, but
something a little more neutral than black.
Right. Just so you can see where the stitching line is, we're using this lovely shade of black.
So you would sew the entire length of the strip. We just done a few to show here.
Oops. Cut thread, and we'll take it out and show you then how you can easily cut them into units. So instead of going back and cutting a bunch of white squares and having them floating around, it's a great way to produce these quickly.
So you're just going to line the ruler up and
slice
cut
down
right between the pairs. This is really fast, and it's if you've got your squares cut accurately, then the white ones will be accurate as well.
So work on your cutting techniques, and it's pretty boring to cut a bunch of white squares.
Right, so this way, instead of cutting all those squares, you just cut the strips, and then you're going to open those up, press them to one side,
and you'll create a bunch of 2 patches.
Right. So now what you're going to do to make this block, we're going to choose 4 of these, which we have already neatly pressed, and then 4 rectangles that are the exact same colors. And what you're going to do then is join them, and this is where it's a little tricky. You want to join one color of the 2 patch with a different color, and you need to do it in the right order to get that woven look.
When I was making even the sample blocks for this, it's all about organization. So take a deep breath. It's fine. You'll get it. Just keep moving them until you can see a continuous line of, for example here, of blue, green, and they'll be woven together perfectly.
So then you're going to join those into rows and join the rows to make this block. And you need 20 of those blocks.
The fun part is finding the fun solid colors that you like to put together to make a block. And some of them are pastels, some are dark colors. You'll see that the whole rainbow is included in this quilt. So
now we're going to talk about the alternate block.
Right.
So you're going to be cutting strips of the 2 beige colors and white triangles. And the first thing you're going to do is make 4 of these units, 2 darks, 2 lights, and this is another one of those tricky things. You got to make sure you line them up correctly. So it goes like that.
The suggestion when you're working on this quilt is to make the first block, get it figured out and oriented in your head. Then you can go back and make multiples at once.
All right. So there again, you'll join those into pairs.
Yep, pairs.
And then join the pairs. And hopefully you'll end up with something that looks like this. And that's a little bit messy.
Yeah, you're looking at that going, that is not a square. Not yet.
We're going to need to trim that.
Right, because the way this is pieced, these would be very odd angles, and we don't want you to have to try and figure out that angle ahead of time. Sometimes it's just best to go back and trim.
So we have a ruler that is 8.5 inches square. So it's going to be the perfect size because that's what size we want to trim this to, is 8.5 inches, so it will finish 8 inches. Now, if you do not have this ruler, you can make an 8.5 inch square.
Of Temple plastic.
And we have put a little X in the center here, measured
On
both
the
directions.
center,
And what you can do is just put that on there. You can either draw around it on all 4 sides and cut on your drawn lines, or you could put the ruler on top of
You
it.
could layer the ruler over the top.
If you have the 8.5 inch square ruler, you're going to find the 4.25 inch line here and the 4.25 inch mark right there, and put that right in the center. You have diagonal lines on the ruler here.
Sometimes this is the time where people get a little confused and they're thinking 4.25. Your block you want to trim to 8.5. There's a little tiny bit of math. If you divide 8.5 in half, it's 4.25.
Right.
So,
So I'm going to cut 2
you should
sides.
be trimming just a little bit. We're not wasting much fabric, but we're
And
just going to
then
make it nice and neat.
I'm going to carefully rotate this around so that I can cut the other 2 sides.
The advantage of that rotating mat that you may have and put away and haven't used in a while, take it out. It's really great for this one.
Is a really handy tool. So that gets those, and then one more. There.
And you'll produce
So-
12 of those offset blocks
So you can
to
see.
alternate with your woven scrappy blocks.
Right. So now if we look at the quilt, you'll see that these are put together in diagonal rows. So the colored blocks are on the outside and the alternate blocks are on the inside. And then all that's left is to cut setting triangles for the sides and the corners and add your outer borders.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us today.
To see more of our video tutorials, go to our website.